Hey, what is going on, guys, and welcome back to another Lost Ark build video. Today I'm going to be covering Sorceress. I'll be going over the best builds for both Igniter and Reflux playstyles, and this was really highly requested, so I hope you guys enjoy this, and I'm sorry if it took a little bit long for this to come out. I only want to make videos about classes that I actually have some hands-on experience with, and I don't want to just sit in Trixion training grounds showing you guys random footage. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to be covering Reflux first, which has been my preferred style of playing Sorceress so far. Reflux disables your Arcane Rupture Identity skill, which means you can freely use your Identity Gauge for Blink, which gives you a ton of mobility. This also decreases the cooldowns of all of your normal abilities, and it increases their damage. Because of this, and because we lose out on the crit buffs from Arcane Rupture, we're going to be focusing on picking up as much crit and crit damage as possible, while also using skills with low cooldowns so we can consistently pump out DPS. Reflux Sorc is also a lot easier to play because you don't have to rely on having good timing or lining up your cooldowns with your identity. However, this is sort of a hybrid build, more what they call a cast Reflux Sorceress, because we will be using Explosion and Doomsday, which are both casting skills. However, I do believe this is the superior build because of the insane damage that both of these skills do. As always, let's start with your stat prioritization. Like I briefly mentioned before, we will be focusing on crit, so you're going to want to split your stats mainly into crit as your primary stat and swiftness as your secondary. This means that you want a crit swift necklace and crit on every other accessory. Because we can't make use of the Arcane Rupture tripods, we will be choosing the crit damage tripods for our abilities, so we're going to need as much crit as possible to actually make use of the crit damage in order to remain relevant in DPS. For your raid skills, you're going to want to have at least 268 skill points, which you should have at this stage, to be honest. The first skill you'll want is Blaze with damage amplification, and this is going to be your synergy / party buff skill. Next, you'll want Squall with Agile Cast as your counter, and for your main DPS skills, you'll need Explosion with Ignite, Weak Point Detection, and Final Strike, Doomsday with Ignite, Flame Area, and Final Strike, and Punishing Strike with Mind Enhancement, Electric Discharge, and Final Strike. Though I should note that you can use any middle tripod for this skill since they are all pretty strong, just use the one that you prefer. Aside from that, you'll also want Esoteric Reaction with Quick Prep, Final Strike, and Shockwave, Frost Call with Mind Enhancement, Unstable Rule, and Final Strike, and Rhyme Arrow with Quick Prep and Piercing Strike. At max skill points, your raid skills for Reflux Sorceress should look like this. Your engravings for this build at first should be Reflux 3 and Adrenaline 1. Later on, you should work towards getting Reflux 3, Precise Dagger 3, Hitmaster 3, and Adrenaline 1. And finally, at late endgame, you should run Reflux 3, Adrenaline 3, Hitmaster 3, All Out Attack 3, and Grudge 3. The reason I replaced Precise Dagger at endgame is because Adrenaline basically trades 5% crit for 6% more damage with no downsides. Even with low swiftness and long cast times on Explosion and Doomsday, you can actually effortlessly keep up max adrenaline stacks due to the low cooldown on Squall and Blaze, and if you just stagger your abilities just a little bit, you can make it work super easily. The Argo set at tier 3 also makes up for the lost crit rate. So let's say you have 45% crit chance from your accessories, add that to the 25% that you get from the Argo's 5-piece set bonus, and the 15% from Adrenaline 3, that's already 85% crit chance without any buffs from any party members. If you ran Precise Dagger instead, you'd have 90% crit rate, but 6% less attack power and 12% less crit damage. So in my opinion, this is way more optimal. I also run All Out Attack because it buffs Punishing Strike with the Electric Discharge tripod, as well as Doomsday and Explosion, which are already our hardest hitting skills, and it also makes them cast faster. I didn't run this earlier on because we desperately needed more combat stats and crit, which we got from the Adrenaline and Precise Dagger combo. But I do want to note that you can swap out All Out Attack for either Curstall or Keen Blunt. I just recommend having the most amount of different damage modifiers so that you don't suffer from diminishing returns on your damage. However, I do want to make a note that in the future, when the Vault and Armor set comes out, if you do transition into that for Sorceress, you will probably have to run Precise Dagger because you won't have all that crit rate from the Argo set anymore. Now let's move on to Igniter Sorceress. This playstyle is completely different. It is very bursty instead of constant damage, and it's also very immobile. But if you want to see the biggest numbers in game, this is definitely the build for you. Ideally, you want to generate your identity as fast as possible, pop it at max, and absolutely unload on a boss once you find a good opening. With Igniter, when you pop Arcane Rupture, 50% of your ability cooldowns are refreshed, and while you're in your identity skill, Igniter also gives you 25% crit rate and 50% crit damage, which is absolutely huge. The only trick that you should know, and every single Igniter Sorceress should probably already know this, but when you cast Doomsday, you can then activate Arcane Rupture right before it hits. This will refresh the cooldown and allow you to pop off another Doomsday with the buff on before it runs out. Now let's go over your stats, because for Igniter, you're going to want to prioritize Specialization instead of Crit as your main stat. You're still going to want Swiftness as your secondary, but Specialization increases the elemental damage that you deal while you're in your Identity skill, and it also increases the amount of Identity meter that you gain, which are both super crucial for making this build work. This means you'll want a spec Swift necklace and spec on the rest of your accessories. For your Igniter raid skills, you're also going to want about 268 skill points at least, and we're actually going to be using the exact same skills as Reflux, just with different tripods. So you'll still want Blaze with damage amplification and Squall with agile cast. You'll also want Rhyme Arrow with enlightenment, Esoteric Reaction with quick prep, enhanced strike and shockwave, and Frost Call with enlightenment, unstable rule, and enhanced strike. These are going to generate a lot of your identity gauge. Your main damage skills will be Punishing Strike with Mind Enhancement, Destruction, and Magic Amplification, Explosion with Ignite, Weak Point Detection, and Magic Amplification, and finally Doomsday with Ignite, Asteroid, and Magic Amplification. At max skill points, your raid skills for Igniter Sorceress should look like this. Your engravings for this build at first should be Igniter 3 and All Out Attack 1. Later on, you should aim for Igniter 3, All Out Attack 3, Precision Dagger 3, and Hitmaster 1. And finally, at endgame, you're going to want Igniter 3, All Out Attack 3, Precision Dagger 3, Hitmaster 3, and Grudge 3. I chose Hitmaster over Cursed Doll because it has no downsides for basically the same effect. And with Precise Dagger combined with the 25% crit rate from the Argo set and the other 25 from Igniter, that should also put you at 70% crit rate, which is really nice. If you do, however, feel like Cursed Doll is better for you, or you haven't been lucky with Hitmaster engravings on your accessories, then by all means, use Cursed Doll. For your Awakening, your go-to should be Inviscous Might. It has higher stagger than Apocalypse Call and has level 2 destruction on it, so it's good for DPS, it's good for stagger checks, and it's good for destruction checks as well. It's also a lot more localized in terms of the hitbox, so it's easier to land in a small damage phase. Now let's go over gems very quickly, because you're basically going to want a CDR and damage gem on all of your damaging abilities, those being Explosion, Doomsday, Punishing Strike, Esoteric Reaction, and Frost Call, and a CDR gem for Blaze. For runes, you should prioritize your higher tier Galewind runes on Doomsday and Explosion, and then your lower tier Galewinds on Punishing Strike, Frost Call, and Rhyme Arrow. For Esoteric Reaction, you'll want a Bleed rune, for Blaze, you'll want a Quick Recharge rune, and for Squall, you'll want a Rage rune. Don't worry too much about your Chaos Dungeon skill runes, it really doesn't matter. Just slot Galewind on all of your damage abilities and Rage or Bleed on your shortest cooldowns, aka Blaze, and you'll be fine. And finally, for your card sets, you're going to want the Lost Wind Cliff set early on, and later on in the endgame, you'll eventually want the Light of Salvation set for optimal damage. And that's going to be it, guys. That is my Sorceress build guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I did get a lot of requests for it. So if you did enjoy it, then a like would be super appreciated. These videos do take a lot of time and effort to make, so leave a comment down below also with what you would like to see next, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.